My friend's old house was rumoured to be haunted. People kept hearing strange noises like footsteps and creaking floors, and some even claimed to have seen a black figure walking around the house. I, however, had never seen anything out of the ordinary, but everything changed the night I dared to enter the basement. As I descended the creaky stairs, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched. The air seemed thick and heavy, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I reached the top of the stairs and waited a few minutes, but nothing happened. Just as I was about to head back upstairs, I saw a shadow out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, and my heart jumped out of my chest. There, standing in the corner of the basement, was a figure unlike anything I had ever seen before. He was tall and skinny, with long limbs and fingers that seemed to stretch forever. The skin was sickly pale, and the eyes were black pits that seemed to absorb all the light around them. He seemed made of shadows, and I felt a chill emanating from him that chilled me to the bone. The hair on top of my head stood up, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I couldn't move. My body seemed frozen in place. My heart started pounding, and every instinct in my body was telling me to run. I turned and sprinted towards the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. But when I reached the top, I heard a sound I will never forget. It was a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from where the silhouette stood. I looked back for a split second and saw the figure was now only a few feet away. His eyes locked on mine, and I felt his gaze pierce me. At that moment, everything in my body went crazy. I jumped down the stairs and ran to the first floor where everyone was. There I threw myself behind an armchair, staring at the stairs in horror. Everyone asked me what happened, and I pointed to the stairs. Eventually, they all looked and saw the figure standing there. Wasting no time, we all ran to the balcony and jumped into my friend's yard. We looked up at the window expecting to see the figure standing there, but there was nothing. We didn't stay to investigate further. We simply ran. It was a night I will never forget. What we experienced that night was terrifying. The feeling of dread and the sense of danger I felt will stay with me forever. I never went back to that house again and never spoke to anyone about it. But I know that what I saw that night was real, and I believe that house was truly haunted by something truly terrifying. As a computer science student, I was required to perform social services at a hospital in Mexico as part of my studies. I thought it would be a simple and straightforward task, but I was sorely mistaken. Most of the time, we were assigned banal tasks like cleaning computers or checking the internet. But one day, the manager had a different task in mind. He asked us to change the outdated Ethernet cables in the basement. The basement was a dark and dreary place, and I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that came over me as I walked down the stairs. The sound of our footsteps echoed throughout the basement, and the shadows seemed to stretch and twist in an unnatural way, almost as if they were trying to cling to us. The basement was filled with the smell of smoke, and the air was suffused with a sense of dread. We could feel the ghostly presence looming above us and couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. 2 hours into our task, one of my colleagues came running up to me, his face full of terror. He claimed he heard a man screaming for help and thought I was in trouble. However, I hadn't heard anything out of the ordinary. I joked with him about what he had smoked the night before and told him to go upstairs if he felt sick. As I went about my business in the basement, I couldn't escape the strange story my colleague had just shared with me. Suddenly, I heard strange sounds that sent shivers down my spine. I froze, and my heart almost stopped when I caught a glimpse of a figure that looked like a man with burns all over his body. I was unable to move as the figure slowly advanced towards me. Panic set in and I sprinted towards the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, in my desperation to escape the ghostly apparition. Breathing heavily, I went to the manager's office and reported what I had seen, who nonchalantly told us that we had just encountered the ghost that haunted the basement. The ghost was said to be the spirit of a man who had died in a basement fire, trapped and screaming for help that never came. The casual way he spoke only made me feel more uneasy. Years have passed since my encounter with the ghost in the basement, but the memory of that day still haunts me. It reminds me of the strange and scary things that happen, even in the most ordinary places. I can still hear the ghostly voice of the trapped man echoing in my mind, and I can feel the cold fingers of death reaching out to me. I often wonder what would have happened if I stayed in the basement a little longer. Would I have met the same fate as the man who had died there? I'll never know, but I do know one thing for sure. I will never venture into that basement again. Have you ever lived in a haunted house? Well, I have, and let me tell you, it's been a wild ride. My wife and I moved to New Hampshire and found the perfect house, or so we thought. My wife is a native New Englander and is quite familiar with the vast emptiness of the region. She even warned me about certain areas considered dangerous and told me not to venture there after dark. Of course, as a non-native, I didn't fully understand these warnings and often came home late from work, taking routes my wife considered too dangerous. I remember her looking at me shocked and disbelieving that I was ignoring her warnings. Eventually, we found a rental house on the Vermont side of the border, and it was perfect in every way, except for the basement. I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched, and it made me feel deeply uncomfortable. However, I am a rational adult, so I decided to ignore this feeling, although I only went down there during the day and avoided going down to the basement at night. One evening, after hours of playing in my man cave, I got hungry and decided to go downstairs to get something to eat. As I walked past the basement door, I saw a red-eyed figure and froze. I felt like I was being watched and knew I was in danger. After a moment of panic, I quickly gathered a gun, called my wife and informed her to call the police. The basement had only one entrance and I had it covered, ready to run if necessary. When the police arrived, they searched the house but found no one. However, they did find muddy footprints that started at the basement stairs and then went into a wall in the back corner of the basement. The wall in question was directly below my bedroom and was solid, with only a small crawl space and limited clearance on the other side. The police detectives were unable to get into the crawl space, and after taking photos and comparing shoe sizes, my wife and I stayed at a hotel for a few nights. For several months after that, I regularly saw red eyes and footprints, but eventually stopped calling the police. My wife was less than thrilled with the situation, but unfortunately the situation forced us to stay there. When COVID came along and lockdowns occurred, we saw an opportunity to move to a better home, one where we would work from home more efficiently. Our current rental had a mold problem that we reported to the landlord several times, but nothing was done to fix it. We finally decided to move, and the landlord sent a housing inspector right after we left. The inspector confirmed the mold problem and found a large number of spores on the wall that bordered the space under my old bedroom, where the footprints always ended. The inspector was able to poke around a bit of the material on the other side of the wall and found that there was a lot of mold. The landlord then hired specialists to remove it and offered me compensation in the form of a rent refund. However, about 3 months later, the landlord called me and offered me a full refund of all the rent I had paid, minus what he had already given me. The reason was that a body had been found, and the coroner had determined that it was the former owner of the property. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to support the channel, we have a link in the description. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, share, like, and press the bell to get notification when new videos are uploaded. You can send your real or fictional stories to the email address in the description.